Happy Friday. Happy Friday morning, everybody. Everybody's caffeinated because we're about an hour into the session this morning. And thanks, Rick, for the great introduction. I'm Amy Paulsen with Rivian Automotive. A little bit about my background. I've been in the automotive, the EV space for about 10 years. I started with Tesla. I was at Tesla for 4 years, back when folks thought that EVs were sort of a pipe dream. And then the last 4.5 years, it's been my privilege to be at Rivian. The first 4 years I spent growing the logistics team from being the first hire to 80 people and global functionality. And in the last 6 months, I've moved over to the legal and policy side to work on opening markets for electric vehicles. It's great to be back in Georgia this morning. I am a once and future resident of Georgia, looking forward to moving down to the Savannah area first of the year. Keeps getting pushed back. Hurricanes don't help the build schedule. But this morning I want to flip gears a little bit and talk about some good news in the EV space, get away from COVID, get away from supply chain challenges, and talk about innovative materials and automotive packaging. When I started at Rivian, it was my privilege to build out all the verticals required to do the logistics for the company. One of those was our supplier packaging group. And one of the benefits of being at a startup electric vehicle maker is that you have a wide degree of autonomy to pursue. I don't want to call it a passion project, but for us, it's part of our mission statement, which is how can we make the world better? And I will just start my slides from here. Are they showing? There we go. Core to Rivian's being is, how can we make the world a better place for our children and our children's children? And it's been my privilege to be able to work with our packaging team on the use of innovative packaging materials in supplier packaging and in internal plant packaging. And that's what I'd like to focus a little bit on this morning. And I'd like to talk about, first, ocean-bound plastics. So this is a project that came to us. My head of packaging and I attended Pack Expo in 2019 in Chicago. And there was a small booth that was dedicated to the collection of ocean-bound plastic. And there's always cocktails involved in some of the best ideas, right? So after the expo, we were having a couple of drinks together, and we came up with this, well, how can we use this? How can we leverage this in our business? We know that our leadership is going to support that. So let's get back to talking about the point of using the ocean-bound plastic is to bring the automotive packaging into a more circular economy. We talk about ESG and we talk about a circular economy, but let's talk about how ocean-bound plastic applies to that. It's a sustainable sourcing practice. You're not using petrochemicals to make new plastic. You're taking that which already exists. You're repurposing it, reusing it, upcycling it, and making it into new material. Our project trades a small cash. It's a cash outlay up front of about 10 to 20% cost up for these packaging materials. But then the impact is pretty stunning. So let's get a little bit more into the ocean-bound plastics. So as I mentioned, once upon a time in 2019, myself and my head of packaging were at Pack Expo in Chicago. We saw the booth focused on pulling ocean plastics from global waste streams. And we were wondering, so much plastic is used in automotive packaging, especially within the plant space. All of your reusable bulk bins, totes, a lot of dunnage. And so we thought there has to be an opportunity to leverage this into a meaningful, scalable program. And our brainchild was sort of born at a dinner, after Pack Expo. But first, let's discuss the basics. What is ocean-bound plastic? It's plastic waste that's released into the environment, eventually ends up in rivers and waterways. It's not what you would see in like the Pacific garbage patch, where there's just a bunch of mixed waste out in the middle of the ocean. This is inland waterways and very near shore in places around the world where there is not an incentivized collection process, or recycling isn't really a part of the waste management paradigm. So we collect this from waterways in primarily developing economies, and Plastic Bank and Envision have been fantastic in helping us scale. We've definitely, I think, driven the need or the demand for this material, and they've been great and hugely responsive in helping meet our needs. What kind of plastic can you use? In our applications in automotive, you need tensile strength. You need strength of that plastic material. So water bottle maybe isn't the best example, but think about your Tide closed detergent bottles. High density plastics like that, they end up in the waste streams, and then they can be collected and pretty easily repurposed. There's the immediate environmental benefit, but there's also a social benefit to the collection of the ocean-bound plastic. It supports social and environmental action and helps contribute to that circular economy. This isn't just a beach cleanup. So we're not sending folks from the developed world out to the beach to collect things and bring them back and let's use this is a token recycling effort. This is this actually has great positive social impact in that the supplier partners that we use incentivize this collection. There's a fair trade process, cash for collection of this material. So there's a wage value there. There's also an environmental cleanup value in that these items would otherwise be discarded and left in waterways to deteriorate the waterway. So it's important to know that this is not a developed versus developing world issue. It's fundamentally just a matter of where there is a lack of a collection and recycling process. So some of the places where our suppliers are actively engaged in pulling this plastic from the waste stream include Philippines, Haiti, Indonesia, Brazil, Egypt, and the countries that I just mentioned have doubled over the last year and a half as our demands and other demands in the automotive world have increased the need for this material. So once the ocean-bound plastic is collected, what does its life cycle look like? So it begins as a consumer product, usually. It's the laundry detergent, the household cleaners, the other high-density plastic consumer bottles that you would purchase. And in places where there is not a recycling stream, these often end up in waterways. So they're discarded into the waterways, and then our suppliers work with local efforts to collect this material, and then it's sorted and sent back. It's processed in the U.S., sent back to the U.S. for processing. We've got a photo there of what it looks like inside the processing plant. It's then flaked and sorted further. It's sorted by material property and by color, and then processed even further into uniform pellets. So this isn't really that different from using virgin plastic material. There's just more sorting and testing of the material properties. But the end product, once you go through the fabrication process, is what you see there at the end. This is just one example that we use within our plant. These large bulk bins, these are used for storage all over the plant. They're used line side for pulling parts. You'll see them in every automotive plant in the world, and we make ours from recycled plastic. There are some cautions when working with this material. Due to environmental degradation, ocean-bound plastic can sometimes have decreased strength properties. So there is a little bit more testing involved when you are sorting and segging, and then before you put this into an injection molder. And that led to some initial caution with our fabrication partners. So, okay, well, we're comfortable using 5% ocean-bound plastic. Well, that wasn't going to have a big enough impact for us. So we pushed the envelope a little bit further. How about 20%? Okay, well, we got 20% through the machine, nothing happened, you know, we're good. Okay, how about 50%? Oh, oi, you know, like, what are you guys going to do to our equipment? We eventually were able to push, because we have a true partnership relationship with our fabricators, push the envelope to achieve 100% ocean-bound plastic recycled containers, and those are also used in our plant. There should be a photo of them a little bit later. They're more sort of transparent white shell color than the darker color that you saw earlier. And as I mentioned, this is a true partnership with our fabricators, SSI, Schaefer, and Orbis. There really had to be a lot of transparent communication and a lot of trust to push the envelope, to change these formulations, to scale up the OBP used, and to make sure we weren't going to break the machine. But it's really this, in my 10 years in EV, this project with these partners has been one of my most gratifying projects. So just a few more, I guess, self-promotional photos. These, the white bins that you see are the 100% ocean-bound plastic bins that are used throughout our factory. So we did it. We got to 100% ocean-bound plastic in our totes. Now what? We did agree, as I mentioned earlier, for some cash trade-off for an economic and social benefit. And at the inception of the program, that cash outlay was about 10 to 20% cost premium over a standard toter bin. And we are so fortunate that we had leadership's support that they were okay with us spending that money to have that environmental and social impact. There's a great opportunity here also for other OEMs to, you know, sort of embrace and experiment with these alternative materials to increase the environmental and social impact. So what are some statistics on what does this actually mean? How does this translate? 10,000 totes of the 100% ocean-bound plastic variety diverts almost 22,000 pounds of plastic from waterways. 10,000 bulk bins diverts about 333,000 pounds of waste from waterways. And using trays, especially perhaps on a battery line, every 10,000 trays diverts 65,000 pounds of waste from waterways. More specifically, in terms of our pilot project, we're going to cut off, we started in 2019, we're measuring the first 5 years. At the end of 2024, we estimate that we will have removed 3.3 million pounds of plastic from global waterways. And that's equivalent to a lot of things, 21 million milk jugs, almost 42 million water bottles, lots and lots of grocery bags and bottle caps. And this is just the impact that one factory has on the waste stream. This represents figures only for our Illinois plant. The other plants that we build globally, where we expect to replicate this project, the impact will just be magnified. Think of the impact that we could have if other OEMs were willing to exchange a little bit of cash for embarking on these processes and the environmental and social impact that we could have. As the first, to my knowledge, we were the first commercial automotive application for ocean-bound plastic, and we've gotten a little bit of attention. So I just want to give a shout out to the fantastic packaging team at Rivian and our suppliers who worked. This really is their passion project. We got an award for this from the Reusable Packaging Association. And this is not just a Rivian award. This is also for our suppliers and for our fabricators. But we're not resting on our laurels. We've got this great program, but what else can we do? We're constantly asking ourselves, what else can we do? And we're always looking at other innovative materials to use in the packaging space. So we continue to research and experiment with other novel materials, such as fiber reinforced plastics. We've talked about the ocean-bound plastic and hemp. Before we get, I guess, worry about the hemp too much, it's the non-psychoreactive part of the plant, so nothing too crazy. Hemp caught our attention as a renewable material because for every hemp plant that you grow, it removes many times its weight in carbon from the atmosphere. So not only in just growing the hemp for the automotive application, you're having a positive environmental impact. It has, hemp reinforced plastics also have a lot of benefits in automotive application. Added mechanical properties, it reduces the greenhouse gases per vehicle manufactured quite significantly. Excellent stiffness and strength for its weight. It could eventually be a replacement for fossil fuel plastic, and it can be paired with OBP. So that's how we're pushing our suppliers now, is how do we mix the ocean-bound plastic and the hemp plastic and come up with like a super plastic. Another example that for us to use, but it's probably a little bit further off, is something called hempcrete. So if you think in the automotive space of all of the concrete that's laid on a factory floor, all of the parking lot that is laid in concrete for an outbound lot, all of your ocean railroad terminals, hempcrete is basically a mix of hemp and concrete, and it absorbs CO2 not just when it's made, but over about 10 years of its life cycle. So that's something that it's probably a second order of importance project, but it is something that we're looking at, especially as we look to expand our footprint globally and build new sites. How can we deploy the hempcrete to have a lasting sort of carbon sponge? We always take a comprehensive view of our packaging value chain. We call it cradle to cradle. So we look at also our inbound supplier material and see how we might reuse, repurpose, or upscale that material. One such application that we're doing currently is we regrind our cell trays when they come in from our supplier, our battery cell trays, and those are ground in-house, and those are put into our own injection molders, and we end up with A-surface parts for some of our vehicles. Really, use of innovative materials in automotive packaging is an opportunity for a paradigm shift to a more circular economy with significant social environmental benefit. It's often overlooked as just the application of boxes and steel, but it really has the opportunity to be so much more. And with that, I have time for questions. Packaging, supply chain, Rivian in general. I'm told that there are microphones towards the front of the room.
Hi there. I have a question. Hi, my name is Lillian. It's so nice to see you, and what a wonderful project you worked on.
Thanks.
I was listening to what you were saying about your goal to do 100%, but Rivian, for what you were just saying, the sustainability story, that you're building these cars for not just your children, but your children's children and the legacy of that. Do you think it's something where you could take those materials, the recycled materials, and actually move it into the car body itself, maybe for the floor mats and such, so that it's not just for your factory usage, but actually becomes a component of the car?
No, great point, and that is something that we're looking at. We're doing that currently with the cell trays, so we are upcycling those, and those become A-surface, meaning that's what you can see. It's a panel you can see inside some of the vehicles. The consumer, as they sit in the vehicle, can see some of this recycled material. It looks fantastic. We have a very strict design department that wouldn't let us put it in the vehicle otherwise. But there are some other very practical applications that you mentioned. So some of the fiber reinforced plastics, floor mats. The body of the vehicle, I'm not sure, because of safety and NHTSA testing, and we're not sure yet how that would stand up. But we are always looking at other ways to use this material.
Sure. Well, I mean, the product for Rivian, like as I've seen from all the ads and commercial, it's very rugged, right? You're really selling to a particular population who are about camping. So maybe there's an opportunity to team up with those who might be designing accessories, for camping and such.
Yeah.
So it really does elevate and bring some more functionality and, visibility. So, but thank you so much for your dedication.
I love the idea. Contact me and I'll put you in contact with the right people. Any other questions? Yes.
With the general topic of supply chain sustainability, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you see or internal discussions around bigger sustainability efforts like ESG scores and some of the other benchmarks that are coming into play that are starting to impact OEMs and suppliers across the supply chain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
ESG scores and other sustainability metrics that you start to consider or think about internally.
Are we looking at those things?
You talked a lot about impact and
Yeah.
the types of impact that hemp and other plastics can have, but in a bigger picture, we're now thinking
Yeah.
about ESG scores and other benchmarks that are going to start to impact us all or need to be reported out as publicly held companies.
So good point. And in the logistics space specifically, and in transportation, we are looking at those sustainability scores in our supply base. It is going to become. We're just sort of hitting critical mass, right? So the production is ramping. 2 years ago we were in the space where, please just carry our freight. But now, we're more of a mainstream OEM, and so we start now in our bidding process for transportation to look at things like sustainability scores and carbon emission scores. One thing that's caught our attention is the use of LNG car carriers, car ships. I know UECC has launched a couple. So as we look to eventually export to Europe, that certainly will catch our attention in the bid process. But those sustainability and carbon emission scores and the type of fuel that you use are going to become very important in our RFQ process. And I'm very excited that, maybe I shouldn't say this because I work for Rivian, but I'm very excited that the electric semis are rolling out. So that's another great opportunity to cut carbon.
Hello. My question may be silly, but just really wanted to understand like fossil fuel plastics and like breaking them down and reusing them and like the impacts to the environment by doing that. And then my second part is, do you think that fossil fuel plastics will be more replaced by the hemp base that you're talking about? And do you know what the process of like re-breaking that down and reusing it is like?
Let me make sure I understand your question. What fossil fuel-based plastics are we using today? And how do we plan to expand the use of the alternative materials later?
Yeah, and I was just thinking because like, is there an environmental impact to breaking the fossil fuel plastics back down again and reusing them? Like when you manufacture it? And if there is, do you see that hemp-based would be more proficient in the future?
If you're recycling fossil fuel-based plastic or ocean-bound plastic, the process is largely the same. It's a little bit in terms of whether there's any sort of emissions byproduct from that process. It's a little bit more labor-intensive to sort and segment and classify by property the ocean-bound plastic. Mm-hmm. So, but I don't think that there's not an emissions change there. So really it's how do we get ourselves away from having to produce new virgin fossil fuel plastic when there's so much in the environment already? How much can we use that? And in terms of we're always looking for opportunities, new ways to use it. So like one of the questions was about, can we use it in other automotive parts? We're looking at concrete. We're looking at 100% of our bulk bins in the factory are ocean-bound plastic. So for the Illinois plant, I don't know how much more impact we could have in that space, but we're definitely going to deploy that elsewhere. And we're open to ideas. We are not a closed shop. So I'm on LinkedIn. if you've got any ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Got a line building up behind us. Hi, I'm Sean Miller with Heritage Interactive. I was just curious if you can shed any insight toward Rivian's long-term sustainability goals. We're so used to seeing stakeholders in your space talking about our zero waste to landfill targets. Do you see Rivian moving towards zero waste to landfill as your strategy, or more of a recognition of your carbon impacts as you make those decisions rather than strictly zero waste to landfill?
So full disclosure, I am not a member of our, oops, I shouldn't touch that microphone. I am not a member of our facilities and building design team, but I do know from being at the company for 4.5 years at you know, a little bit of an upper level that zero waste generation at our facilities is an interim goal. Figuring out how to do that is you know, is the complication, but we're working on doing that in Illinois. Not just for the waste generated, but also how can we reduce our impact for the materials that we pull in. So they have some interesting ideas, you know, about like how we source the food for the cafeteria, you know, at the Illinois plant. But yeah, zero waste is an end goal. We're definitely not there yet.
Of course. Thank you.
But it's more than just carbon emissions.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Paulsen. Carlos Suarez from Seaburger Digital Integration. I think it's an amazing initiative that you folks have there at Rivian. I have very selfish reasons because I love seafood, I love good seafood, and I love clean oceans. My question is, what percentage of your suppliers are fully on board with supporting this initiative?
So we've not expanded this initiative to the extent that it's become a requirement for our parts suppliers to use ocean-bound plastic or reusable material in the packaging. The caveat to that is not to get too nerdy in logistics, you know, in logistics terminology, but our Incoterms dictate that we pick up at the supplier's door. So over time, as we scale and have more influence over those suppliers and become a bigger portion of their business, we'll be able to drive those packaging requirements. Right now, we're really focused on parts arriving unbroken, but as time goes on and as our production ramps and we become a bigger share of their business, we'll be able to drive some of these novel materials into that packaging stream.
Good morning, Amy, and thank you for your presentation. The numbers, the outcomes from your current volumes, the volumes look really large in terms of repurposed waste stream. How much more capacity is there in your supply chain to continue to provide and support the growth of your efforts and the repurposing of ocean-bound plastics? Do you have that an adequate supply as you guys expand and perhaps others enter this space?
I think that there are plenty of places to continue to source the plastic. The gating factor is probably going to be the fabricators that are willing to work with this material. So we have 2 strong fabrication partners now. We may need to expand beyond that scope. You know, as we were iterating and experimenting with this program, there was concern that the OBP would react differently in the extrusion machines, in the extrusion process. That didn't really turn out to be the case. So hopefully that builds confidence and others will come on board. Because if we launch 2 or 3 facilities over the next 10 years, and then other OEMs come on board and decide, hey, this is a great idea. This is a great, great positive impact that we can have. Yeah, the demand has the potential to spike, and there may not be enough fabrication capacity. Thank you for the question. Okay, I don't see anybody else. Well, thank you everybody for your attention this morning. Have a great Friday. Safe travels back to wherever you came from.